All right, good afternoon and welcome to BNE Enterprise webinar, Queensland's Workplace of Tomorrow. Whether you're working from home, you're back in the office, or a combination of both, we hope that all of our attendees today are staying safe and well. We're very glad you can make today's session after a very successful May Australia Trade Coast webinar alongside Brisbane Marketing. We had roughly 175 people taking part in that last webinar session. So we got some tremendous feedback from our attendees, and that's basically going to create a number of topics and themes over the coming months as we help our members and their associates to navigate their way through the COVID pandemic and beyond. Today we have three of Queensland's leading human resource experts on hand to help us unpack what will be the new reality of COVID-safe workforce planning in Queensland. The issues today we're going to discuss include our future workplace environments, changes to our use of technology, the work from home dynamic, and how to address the long-term wellbeing and professional development of employees who fear being isolated. Our guest speakers for today are Jane Dionysius, Executive General Manager of Human Resources at Brisbane Airport Corporation, Kelly Wilkes, the Head of People and Culture at MOQdigital, and Kate Vuleta, Partner Human Resources at UNU Recruitment Partners. Kate today is going to be our moderator. We thank her very much for putting her hand up to take both Jane and Kelly through the Q&A session for today. As was the case in the last session, it's going to be a fairly fluid affair. Once Kate's given her presentation and the Q&A with Jane and Kelly, we'll then open questions up from our attendees today. So please, throughout today's webinar, don't hesitate to put questions down, and Kate and I will endeavour to ask those questions of Kelly and Jane toward the end of the session. At the end of the session, we'll be welcoming James Cooper from Gulf Central to talk to us about one of the initiatives that Gulf Central is running for a team building exercise we want all of our members to learn more about. And before I hand you over to Kate for today's session, I'd like to welcome and give a warm welcome to our new BNE Enterprise members who've joined us in June: Sonic Health Plus, Fire EMT, 3D Logistics, Biodiversity Australia, First Food Co, and Wild Cider, Wild Brews. We welcome all of you at today's session. Thank you very much for taking part, and I'll now hand you over to Kate. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon and giving an hour of your time. I'm really excited to be part of the session this afternoon and to facilitate the discussion with both Jane and Kelly. I'll just ask Jane to share some slides that we have just to get started. I want to introduce to you, if you're not aware of us, UNU Recruitment Partners. So I'm the partner of the HR practice here. So I recruit senior HR leadership roles in the Brisbane and Queensland market. Over the last 3 months, I've had a really unique perspective because all of my conversations have been with HR leaders in how they're guiding businesses through this time. But just as a quick snapshot, UNU is headquartered in Brisbane. This is where our founding office is based. But we do have 3 locations, one in Sydney CBD and one in the Greater Western Sydney. We're really experienced consultants across each of our practice areas, which you can see there. In terms of the last 3 months for us as a business, there's obviously been a huge impact on employment and roles. And what we've done is really move to run a series of events for our clients and where we can network them together to share some of the challenges and impacts that COVID's had to their business and to help them work with their peer group across the sector on information sharing and how to, I suppose, approach some of those challenges. So as a business, over the last 3 months, we've run 62 virtual client events where those have been immersed conversations in how businesses are approaching COVID. 1,295 of our contacts have attended those sessions, and there's been over 600 businesses represented there. We've also had a unique perspective in that last year we became part of WIL, which is an international group of 9 recruitment businesses across the world. So we've been able to catch up on a regular basis with those businesses just to share what's happening in different parts of the world, which has been extra interesting insight as well for us. In terms of our business, and I suppose what the impacts have been and how we've had to adjust to that, I'll just get Jane to move to the next slide, but this is a bit of a snapshot of the jobs in the market coming from SEEK as the major job board, which just shows you the impact that COVID had in late March and April, but the slow recovery that we're seeing now. And I would say to you that in the last month in Brisbane in particular, we're definitely seeing a little bit more buoyancy or some green shoots there in terms of the market. As a business, we've adjusted some of our support staff. We've had to look at what markets and what industry sectors are working strongly and focus our attention and our support to the clients there. But we've also played a critical role in supporting candidates who might be displaced as a result of COVID, and really supporting them getting through this period and exploring new opportunities. Just on the next slide, Jane, if I could get you to move to that. We're going to explore this in more detail with Jane and Kelly today, and really look at their businesses as a bit of a case study. But in the conversations that I've been having with HR leaders across Queensland, I just wanted to give a bit of a high-level summary of, I suppose, a synopsis of initially the challenges and what were those going into COVID. So when everything really hit, the real focus was on technology and technology enablement. Some of the challenges were around businesses having poor or little risk planning or business continuity planning in place. There's been some huge cultural effects, and again, we'll get Jane and Kelly to speak to that further. But really, with whole offices having to really mobilise within a week to working from home, that really tested a culture of presenteeism versus outcomes. There's been a focus on leadership capability and being able to lead people through quite an unknown time. And then challenges for those people in roles where there was criticality around where they were based and how those roles were performed. And then communication to workforces has also been one of the biggest challenges, but I think key to the success of many businesses coming through this. Some of the adaptations that have been made, and again, Jane and Kelly will speak further to this about their businesses, but there's been some great stories about businesses really moving quickly to enable great IT to be able to work remotely. There's been expedited decision making in many large and traditionally bureaucratic businesses, so they're realising that they can be more agile in their decision making. I think businesses have commented on seeing great leadership coming from people where they hadn't seen that previously. The theme of everyone being all in this together really uncovered some great elements of cultural gold that businesses hadn't seen prior to the crisis, and I'm keen for Kelly and Jane to share that and their experience there. More of a focus on mental health and family and roles in the workplace as people are living and working and parenting and schooling in some cases all under the one roof. More dialogue around the mental health piece as well. And there's a mixed return to the workplace, which we'll discuss in more detail soon. Jane and Kelly are also going to share with us what their plans are for the future. So for a lot of businesses that I'm speaking to, they're all saying that our physical workplace will really look different to what it ever has before, and they're planning for that from a physical perspective. There's a quote I have there where there's one large superannuation business headquartered in Brisbane where they've said, we'll never have 100% of our people in the office ever again. So they're actually looking at their floor plans for that. And a lot of businesses are reconfiguring their office spaces and using the time where people are out of the office to do that so that they can look at the required social distancing when people return. There's been lots of surveys going out and people are continuing to survey their employee groups. And then there's even more of a focus on mental health as we, the pandemic strings along for longer than what we had anticipated. Just finally, I wanted to share on a positive note some of the consistent themes across those businesses that have really thrived during this time. And that might not be from a financial perspective, but it might be from a cultural perspective. So this is what I've summarised as what I've observed to be consistent themes. The business had an existing culture and a strong focus on flexible work, and they already had their technology platforms set up to enable that. So the businesses were already working flexibly. They already had in place business contingency and risk plans, and they could quickly mobilise those or shift them to be health pandemic focused. A lot of businesses had business continuity or risk plans based upon a large environmental catastrophe, but that was a good platform for them to be able to pivot that to a health pandemic. The other piece I observed is that there's strong and cohesive relationships across the leadership group. So they were communicating regularly, they were challenging each other in their thought process when decisions had to be made really quickly, and getting that information out to the business in a timely manner and in a consistent manner. The CEO was visible and present to the business. And the other key theme, and I think important for today, is that HR already had a seat at the table. So there's never been a time, I think, where a HR professional has been more leaned on than through this COVID period. So I'd like to just give you a quick high level of what we'll cover off today. I'm going to ask Jane shortly just to talk through the current state of Brisbane Airport Corporation, and Kelly also in terms of MOQdigital. We'll then look at what the future focus is for the business, and then we'll open up to any questions as well. So I'd like to hand over to Jane. So Jane's the Executive General Manager of Human Resources for Brisbane Airport Corporation. Jane, just at a high level, could you just give the audience an understanding of BAC as a business, the size, the culture, and maybe some of the major impacts at the initial crisis point?
Yeah, sure. So afternoon, everyone. So yeah, Brisbane Airport Corporation, or as we like to refer to it, BAC, we're responsible for the safe and efficient operation of Brisbane Airport, but we're actually more than just someone who runs the airport. We're actually a large property developer. We've got 2,700 hectares of land. So to put it in context, that's the equivalent to about 383 Suncorp stadiums in our land. So we have one of the largest land banks in Brisbane for property development, and that makes us a significant landlord of the airport precinct, as well as having the responsibility for the management of the airport functions. So generally, I'd be telling you that we'd have 23, 24 million passengers a year coming through our airport. Obviously, that's different now. At the moment, we've got less than a couple of hundred a day going through the airport. So, you know, for an airport, stopping planes flying is the single biggest impact you can actually have. And it's not just Brisbane Airport Corporation that is being impacted by that. There are actually 425 companies that work on the airport precinct. It's about 24,000 people. And, you know, a significant number of those are feeling the impacts of the changes to the tourism and aviation industry in particular. So where were we a few months ago? When this whole thing started, we were concerned about the Chinese traffic. So for an airport, China is a significant target market. So back in January, we thought we were going to lose China for a period of time, and that was, you know, concerns from an executive level. Then the pandemic spread, and they soon realised that China was the least of our worries in terms of our international traffic. We found ourselves in a situation that not only did we have to manage our staff in terms of the constantly changing environment, it was actually the changing regulatory environment associated with airports. So it was almost on a daily basis. We would hear, you know, retail's being closed in food courts, retail's being closed across the airport, Queensland health screening, moving to hotels. And as the operators of the airport, we were actually responsible for facilitating all of those requirements. So it was one of the most intense periods I think our business has ever faced. And it was facing something that we'd never really planned for. I think Kate really hit it on the head when she said that businesses that had strong contingency plans would have been ahead of the game. Obviously, as an airport, we do have strong business contingency planning, particularly in the case of, you know, an air crash or something like that. And we had contingency plans for a health pandemic in the terminals. What we've never really had to do is shut down components of our operation. Airports don't close, and our airport never closed. It's still open to this day. But we did have to consolidate and reduce certain components, and that's not something we've faced before. And from a HR point of view, culturally, that was something really challenging for our people. I think anyone who works in aviation or even maybe works in the airport precinct, they'll agree, and they say that, you know, aviation gets in your blood. It's a cool, interesting, sexy industry. It changes every day, and you can't help but love the industry and be a part of it. So for a lot of our staff, you know, seeing the airplanes parked on the runway, that was having a significant impact on their well-being. And it wasn't them being concerned about their own personal job security. It was actually concern for the business and what it was going to mean. So in terms of where we're at today, we're expecting that we as a business will not fully recover from this for 3 to 4 years. You know, this isn't a speed bump for us. This is a mighty big ditch. We don't think international traffic will open till at least next year. And look, we were hopeful we would be getting an announcement about domestic borders opening this week. But recent events down south may impact that. So it is very much for us a wait and see. And so planning for the future is quite a challenge for us at this point in time. And then providing certainty around to our employees and those sorts of things. So we're estimating next financial year, so financial year 21, we will have less than 10,000 passengers. It could go down as low as 3,000 passengers, depending on how the pandemic expands. So 24 million to 10,000. So you can understand what sort of impact that's going to have. At one stage, we had over 100 aircraft parked. So we had more aircraft parked at our airport than we did cars, which was a bit of a running joke in our parking business. And it was really managing the logistics of that. So as I mentioned, there was the cultural impact, but we also found that we had, as an airport, we have to stay open. We're an essential business. So that 24/7 operation of our airport was absolutely key. And we became quite concerned about what we call our essential workers. So they're the individuals that have to physically be here to operate the airport. It's actually a legislative requirement. They're shift workers who all operate in a rolling shift pattern. So if one of those did get exposed to COVID and we had to go into isolation, we actually didn't have enough people to sustain the shift patterns if we lost more than one shift at a time. So we had to set up temporary site offices, so separate buildings, and have all of our shifts running at separate locations to make sure that if, unfortunately, a member of staff did become unwell, we could still keep the airport operating. I'm sure you can appreciate finding people who are qualified to run an airport and not people you can get off the street quickly. So that was a big piece of work for us to pull together, probably in a week. In the middle of that, we were negotiating an enterprise agreement, so that was just a bit of fun on the side. But you know, it was really making sure we could get that business continuity in terms of our people. Because our staff were directly exposed to passengers, there was a higher risk of contraction of COVID in those early days when we still had international passengers coming into Brisbane. A lot of our staff were the front line. So we had a lot of work with Queensland Health about setting up a COVID 24/7 contacts line. And we had to do a lot of work in terms of whenever there was a passenger that came through the terminal, we actually facilitate that tracing system through to our staff as well. So that was a challenge. That's something we hadn't necessarily prepared before. But, you know, our people responded really well. Like I said, people love working for the airport. They love the industry. BAC has always had an incredibly strong culture. And we saw that culture come to life. And a lot of it was about what can we do to help? Where can we be? You know, let's make this happen. So it was a really pleasing and heartwarming experience, even though it was also incredibly challenging.
Thanks, Jane. That's that cultural gold, I think, that comes through that people weren't anticipating that you're able to capture from the business. Really challenging. I don't know if there's any other business that had impacts in quite so many facets. I'll hand over to Kelly now. So Kelly's the head of people and culture for MOQdigital. Kelly, can you just the same give us a good understanding of the business and perhaps you know, insight into your culture and then what some of the challenges were for you right at that crisis point?
Thanks so much, Kate and Jane, obviously hearing that story. I mean, Brisbane Airport Corporation is a customer of ours. So one of the key things that's coming through, so MOQdigital, we say that we help people achieve more with technology. So we are a systems integrator or provider of technology to customers. And basically we provide innovative solutions across data, applications and systems. So for us, we have, like the airport does, they have customers. Our customers are other businesses. And so one of the big things that came to light straight away is not just the psychological safety of our staff, because we're a reasonably small organisation. So in Australia, we're operating around 150 staff. We also do have an offshore branch based in Sri Lanka, Colombo, which is a whole nother story. But, you know, we've got this cross-section across a number of industries that were affected. So there are some of our customers who are in the travel industry, and so like the airport, it was we're working one day and the next day the business is almost ground to a halt. We had other industry sectors we work with that got busier, so education. So we were called upon by educational facilities that we work with over the long term, saying, can you please help us move our learning online? Oh, and by the way, we've got 3 days. We're going to be teaching our students from home. So that kind of reaction. But overall, the key thing is there's actually just less money in the system. And so what that means is the entire ecosystem gets affected. So even those businesses who are busier, some are doing well, but the whole environment has been affected, because ultimately as a community, and BNE itself is a community with businesses operating on it, the whole community becomes affected. And so from a staffing point of view, and when I think about people and culture, HR is one of the things we have, but we also have our learning and development and our evolving portion. That psychological safety, which Jane talked about, is not just, am I okay? Is my family okay? But what about my work colleagues, my spouse, my friends, my family? So this overarching uncertainty in the world actually impacts the way people bring themselves to work. So they want to be hopeful, they want to do their best. And in some cases, we found people are working more because they're trying to work their way out of the situation, but ultimately, the economic impact of what's occurred, as well as the health and safety impact, then does affect the way that they view the world. So in terms of what we do at MOQdigital, I mean, we're a digital transformation company. Ironically, I saw a joke on LinkedIn this week which said, what was the major cause of your digital transformation at work? And it had A, CEO, B, CIO, C, COVID-19. And ultimately, there are some levers that are being pulled in the technology era. But as everyone would know, technology is only one pillar. We talk about people, then process and technology. So we were extremely prepared from a technology perspective, because we would at any one time operate a work environment where around 70% of our workforce would be working either on a customer site, in some capacity remotely, or already from home. And we would have our anchor staff who mostly came to work every day. So from a technology perspective, we were really set up to do that. We did have a very strong BCP in place, and partly that is because we sell services which require us to support our customers during BCP events. And to give you an example on that, in Australia, again, that is fairly straightforward. For our Sri Lanka office, that was slightly different, but many people will realise that there was a terrorist attack in Sri Lanka last year at Easter, so just short of 1 year. That was a situation where we already had to enact a full BCP for the safety of our staff for a different reason. So we had already had a dry run on that, which meant that we were really prepared from a technology perspective. So we were able to then very much focus on people and process, and ensuring that we were able to continue doing business and supporting our customers through this time. So in terms of how we're currently working from a location perspective, we kept our Australian offices open on a skeleton staff, and we rotated our executive through the office as an anchor point. We have given all of our staff choice around where they work. It is a little bit different in Sri Lanka because of some other reasons, but we'll focus on the Australian business. And we've since then gone through the motions in line with the government recommendations around safety, cleanliness. We then went into a 2-team scenario where we had 2 distinct containers of staff that shouldn't cross over from a safety perspective. And as would almost everyone in any form of HR and people and culture, there are a number of guidelines from a safe work perspective that we have to follow, aligning with cleaning, provision of safety, etc. But ultimately, the safety or our employees' view of safety is, we found, and I'm curious to see, and hopefully this will come out in the line of questioning, the safety is more focused around cognitively, I know that you're cleaning. Cognitively, I know that there's sanitizer. I know that the desks are being wiped. But is my job safe? What's happening to the world economy? How are my family? Are my kids safe? My family who are interstate, I haven't been able to see them. So this whole safety element is beyond just the physical safety. It's very much around how they feel. And I use the word feel very distinctly. And so that's part of the thing that we've had to address in terms of what are the ways we can bring our staff together to feel that they have an audience, but also find ways to, look forward and have a way forward. So from an MOQ perspective, what that's meant is our rhythm of our business, like many, will be, straight away going to daily stand-ups with all of our teams, enabling our management team to ask at every single meeting, how are you? How is your family? Is there anything you need help with? So that things bubble to the surface and don't fester and simmer. We were then, because we're a tech company, we were lucky enough to very quickly put that into an app so that even people who didn't feel that they could bring that up in a meeting would have the ability to digitally actually do a request for assistance of, actually, I'm not doing okay. And then one of the pieces of feedback we had was giving people the chance to share something positive, because there was this feeling of it's all doom and gloom. So when they were saying, I'm doing really great, share something positive, and creating these channels to keep the communications up where you don't have that physical proximity of the sharing of space and ideas and bumping into each other. And so lastly, before we go to the Q&A, because I think that's probably one of the most important bits, for us it was realizing that we needed to create environments where people could come together in a way that was unstructured but didn't feel structured, because there was so much unstructured interaction that went on in our business. And where a lot of that came in was our values. So all companies have a set of values. We started doing a lot of organizational storytelling about those organizational values, but told as behaviors, and particularly onboarding new staff remotely, which some people will had to have done. How do you describe what behaviors are and are not acceptable in your business if you can't physically see each other, you can't see how others behave? So we had to put a lot of focus on the way we use the language around our values and behaviors to ensure that people really understood that. So that's a little bit of an introduction about where we're at, and I'm sure more will come out in the Q&A.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kelly. Jane, if I could just hand back over to you. I'm really interested, before we do move to the questioning, maybe what are kind of 3 to 5 focus areas or challenges that you're looking at into the future for BAC, from a people and culture perspective, and even from a business operational perspective, and how you and your team are supporting through that?
Yeah, sure. So I think firstly we've made a big step forward in the fact that we actually have our staff back in the workplace. Yeah. So we're a slightly different demographic to a tech company, and we actually found that a lot of our staff really struggle with working from home, and there was a really strong desire to get back into the workplace. So we've been back in a shift rotation for 6 weeks now, and we're now back to full-time capacity. We have one of the benefits of the fact that we actually have 7 separate offices on airport. So we actually have our workforce in distinct areas, and there's enough space in those offices to allow for social distancing. So we haven't had to spend any money renovating or changing our offices. And I would encourage you all to really make sure you go through those safe work guidelines, because you can achieve a lot of it through cleaning. And really strong cleaning regimes without necessarily having to spend a lot of money on physical changes. We actually consulted with the Chief Medical Officer and sent through our airport safe work plan, which included our office plan, and that was signed off with a lot of support. So I'm happy to reach out offline to some people if they want some advice on how you can achieve that transition back into the workplace. I think one of the key things is the ability for people to not have to use public transport, because that provides significant limitations. So being at the airport, not being in the city, we have on-site parking for all our staff. So that was a bit of a benefit. In terms of going forward, we actually have one of the most exciting stages of our business happening in 2 weeks, and that is that our new Parallel Runway is opening. This is a project that is 18 years in the making. And I don't say 18 years lightly, it really was 18 years. And it's actually the single biggest thing that we've done at the airport for a significant amount of time. Unfortunately, we're not celebrating it the way we planned. We originally planned to have all the staff and all their family out on the runway for a big family fun day. That's not possible to social distancing. So this afternoon, I'm actually going out with 25 people at a time to take a photo on the runway. That's our new celebration. But what that runway means for our business is a game changer. 12 months ago, I would have been boasting about the fact that we'd have more capacity than any other airport in Australia. It's a little bit ironic to say that now, given that planes aren't flying, but it still gives us that for the future. And it actually gives Brisbane the opportunity to grow and develop. So what we need to do as a business going forward is make sure we don't lose sight of the opportunities and the benefits that we've achieved through the delivery of that runway. And we need to capitalize on it. We're really focused on coming out of this bigger, better, stronger, and faster as a business. So we've broken the crisis up into 3 distinct phases. We had the crisis phase, which was really March through to the end of April. And then we moved into the recovery phase. And this, the 1st of July, we're moving into the rebuild phase. So now it's, it's not talking about COVID and what's happened. It's about rebuilding our business and going forward. And from a HR point of view, that's really exciting for us. It's time for us to sort of lay the foundation about the old way of doing things doesn't exist anymore. This is the new BAC. We've been transformed in a way that no one would have ever expected an airport to be transformed. And we can really optimize on some of the things that I think, Kate, you spoke about. We saw through that crisis and recovery phase about delivering things quicker. We delivered a platform called BNE Marketplace, which is an online e-commerce website to sell products that our retailers had in stock that they obviously couldn't sell because the terminals were closed. We got that site up and running in a 3-week period. Now that traditionally probably would have taken us 9 to 10 months. We banded together, we got people working on key projects, and we got that delivered. We launched a platform called BAC Tasker, and it basically was a virtual jobs board internally where people could post jobs. So if you had a task that you needed support with, you could post it, and then people could also nominate themselves to work on jobs. So we got more cross-skilling and redeployment of staff during that period than we've seen in a long time. During the crisis phase, we made the commitment that we would not stand down or lose any staff during that period. So we did have the situation where we had quite a lot of staff that did not have work to do because simply the airport was not running the way it would normally run. So we were able to partner with some of our partners, and Datacom being one of those, who redeployed some of our staff who worked for Datacom for a period of time. So it was really tapping into our network to try and make sure that we could support our employees. And that's not going to end for us. As I mentioned, we've got a 3 to 4 year recovery. All of those initiatives that we had to apply during that period around protecting our employees and providing with opportunities, we are going to need to keep focusing on. And I think for me as a HR representative in the company, one of my biggest challenges, but I guess also opportunities, is how do we provide strategic direction and role clarity when we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like? How do we tell our people, this is where we're going, this is what we're going to achieve? How do we set KPIs and set targets and give people that sense of ownership when we don't know when the airport will return? We don't know what the passengers will come back. There's one thing's getting the borders open, then it's actually getting people flying again. So that's a significant challenge for us as an exec team, but we actually see it as an incredible opportunity because we can reset some of the things in the business that we've never had that opportunity to reset. Our vision is connect the world and create the future. And that was a vision that we rolled out last year as part of a change in the organisational structure. And I actually think that vision could not be any more relevant now than ever. We're here to connect the world. We've got our runway. We're ready to go. And we are ready as an airport. We've got all of our safe work practice in place in the terminals. So the day those borders open, people can get on planes and they'll be safe. And it's about creating the future. So that's the future for us as a business, the future for our employees, but also the future for Brisbane. We've still got some really exciting things happening in Brisbane with Queen's Wharf. And I think Brisbane's got an opportunity to actually come out of COVID as a better city and take over some of the tourism that Melbourne and Sydney's traditionally had.
I would agree with you there. Even our business, we've seen increased inquiries in terms of candidates and opportunities and wanting to come to Brisbane as a location. I think the focus on infrastructure and major projects as well is a real positive. We've seen a lot of our work is being done within that utilities government-owned corporation sector where there's strong funding, and they've almost taken it as a responsibility to keep going with their projects and keep people employed during this time. And I think that that's been a really positive sign for the Queensland and the Brisbane market as well. Kelly, just quickly, could I ask you to comment just around, I suppose, the cultural elements or you know, 3, I suppose, focus areas for your business, which is obviously very different, and perhaps, you know, being a digital business, a little bit more agile than where BAC was coming into all of this. Would be really interested in, you know, what the future holds for you.
Thanks, Kate. So one of the things that was really interesting in the discussions that Jane and I have had is our business is very different, and now some of our challenges are very different, but some of the human element things are quite common. So agility is very much about the way that people use the technology. So one of the great things about our business is that the requirement for technology isn't going away, and in some ways this has only increased that requirement. One of the big challenges for us is just simply that there's not a long-term view. So typically businesses have, you know, strategies, strategic operations. We work with long-term customers on how they can meet their long-term strategic objectives. Ultimately, they ask us to help them meet their own business objectives. So now we're in a world where people have these shorter timeframes to plan because of that uncertainty. It's actually changing the cycle of the way we do business and how we do business, as well as the fact that people may want to do digital transformation businesses, but ultimately they have less budget to do it. And so therefore, in the same vein, our priority first and foremost is to keep our existing staff busy, keep them focused on the right things, ensure we're continuing with their personal and professional development, because we don't want to lose any of that, you know, great productivity that we have inside of those businesses. But at the same time, you know, things like productivity and innovation and doing more with less, we've had these cash cries for years and everyone talks about it, but ultimately we've got a situation now where it is actually constraint-led innovation. How do we continue to support our customers and survive? Ultimately, all of our businesses want to survive through this period, because if there's anything that we know, it's that when people are able to resume some semblance of what used to be a life normal, yes, the world will have changed, but ultimately those things, which is we want connection, we want to travel, we want to see the world, we want to be involved with each other, that will come back. What is difficult is how long is that going to last for, and how do we maintain that in the meantime? So the things that we're excited about is the fact that, you know, the IT department can be a hero in this situation, because we are able to provide services to help people with remote working. We can be there to support, even if that is just the help desk, because that anxiety that comes when you're trying to log in remotely, trying to join a webinar, trying to run a meeting, is that technology, getting it working and getting that support. So your IT departments actually become a true partnering opportunity for your business. And one of our jobs is to focus on making our IT departments of the customers we have, help them to be that for their staff, help them to be the heroes and make sure that they're ready, they're prepared, and they're safe and secure. Because if you're reading any of the news, IT security is a massive issue. And unfortunately, you know, bad people use these opportunities as well. So making sure that we have that education and helping them with that security whilst we have remote working. So that is a challenge and an opportunity for us. Being sticky and staying there and having the back of our customers through this when they may not be able to do all the things they wanted to do, helping them get the most out of what they've already invested in. It's a key factor. You know, people are not coming saying, hey, I've got this brand new budget for FY21, let's go and do some cool innovative things. It's how do we use what we've got to survive through this, meet the requirements of our business so that we can be there on the other side. And many of our customers will have to reinvent themselves along the way. So even with education as an example, we literally had situations where we were able to build and deploy environments to onboard 30,000 staff and students in a matter of days to help them do remote learning. Was it perfect? No. Were we there for them and for their IT departments to help them through it? Absolutely. There was a level of patience that we've never normally seen with these things because we were all in the boat together. So one of the things, if we look about the considerations for the future, and coming back to a comment that you made very early, which was one of your customers saying we'll never have 100% of the staff in the office at one time. I think a challenge for all of us is when you operate 100% remote business, everybody's on the same playing field.
Mm.
We're all at home, we're all on a device, we're all have this equal standing in a meeting. When you're all in the office, you have a different dynamic. The world of the half in, half out is actually a much more difficult human dynamic to manage, because anchoring naturally occurs as soon as you have a meeting room in the picture, which means that those people on remote meetings actually struggle. So our education and trialing, how do we work in a half technology, half meeting room space, especially because everyone will have their meeting room capacity cut. We've had the same thing. Myself and my team had to go around and measure all the rooms, how many 4 square meters, how many people are allowed, redo all the signage, change all the technology. That was the easy bit. The next bit is, well, we actually want to have a workshop with 12 people, but the room only has 10 capacity. So which 2 people don't get to come in? And how do they make sure they've got their ideas across? So these are some of the things that get really interesting. And also because we are a remote workforce, which means that our staff need to go to our customer's site. So that has a set of implications of how do they do risk assessments, how do they understand the safe work procedures and feel comfortable to actually attend customer site. Because the reality is, when it comes to technology, sometimes you physically have to press a button, touch the environment and move things around. So all of those considerations for the future is we're in a position where things will be tough, because the whole environment, the whole economy is tough, and we'll have to evolve with that along the way. But ultimately, we know that people will need technology, and they'll need to continue to get the most out of it, which is, you know, a great opportunity for us to be able to survive through this period.
Great, thank you. I'm just conscious of time, and Doug, I can see that there's been some questions that have come through from some of the attendees, and I've got a couple of additional ones as well, but I might just hand over to you to ask those of Jane and Kelly.
Yeah, sure, Kate, thanks very much. Look, we've got a question in here from Mark Lindley to our panellists for today. With the local aviation, specifically BAC, and a 3-year recovery period, what's the strategy to retain the key talent and prevent them from seeking more active base locations? Just before you answer that, Jane, I guess that brings me to, you know, some of the strategies that Queensland businesses can employ to attract world best talent into southeast Queensland. Can you sort of run us through some of the key unique points of difference, I suppose, that Brisbane has over other capital cities in Australia and globally?
Well, first, it's Brisbane. I think that just says it all. I mean, it's winter and it's 25 degrees. Like, what else do I have to say, right?
It was cold last night.
Oh, yeah.
Take you out on a runway, Jane.
Yeah, I'll take you out on a runway. How's that? Look, to be honest with you, attraction of high talent is something that BAC has never struggled with. Like I said, people generally, they want to work in aviation, and there's not many airports in Australia. So the skills and types of capabilities that an airport employs are very different to airlines. There's very few roles where there's that direct overlap. So we employ a lot of construction project managers. We're really an infrastructure business. We build the infrastructure to enable the airport. And then we also have our operational staff. So we generally have been able to rely on the fact that we are an airport. Brisbane Airport has a good brand in the market. We do have that strong culture. So we are able to attract the talent. But I think going forward, you know, Mark's really hit the nail on the head. Retaining that talent when we don't actually have the activities we used to have. We won't be building the buildings that we were planning on building over that next 3-year period. So what we're really looking at is partnering with our partners, looking at where are opportunities we can actually redeploy key staff to maybe another business or another component of the airport industry to work there for a 12-month period as a secondment to then come back to BAC. We have a partnership with Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands, and you know, when the borders do open, actually using that as an opportunity to make sure we can give our staff opportunities to grow. Because I think one of the greatest challenges for us is going to be not so much people leaving because they've got other job opportunities. As I said, you know, for a lot of people with the airport specific skills, they need to go to another airport, and all the airports are in the same boat as us. So I'm not too concerned about other airports poaching our people at this point in time. I think that will be an issue in a couple of years, but we have quite a number of staff. We have an older workforce. Our average age here is 48. I have more people over the age of 60 than I do under the age of 20. So we have spent a lot of time and effort investing in getting people ready for retirement. They've indicated to us they're planning on retirement. So we've spent a lot of money developing that next level below to be ready to step up. And I think we can realistically say that a lot of people's retirement plans have been impacted by this. So a lot of people won't be retiring this year or next year. They might be retiring 3 to 4 years from now. Yet we've got this workforce sitting below them that's ready to go. And they're itching for that opportunity, for that promotion. And we're not going to be able to provide that to them. So that's a real concern for us is what do we do with that talent that we've invested in and that is ready to be promoted, but the position's not necessarily going to be available. And we're not going to be growing or expanding in terms of our workforce during this period. So we are really trying to work with our stakeholders and our providers to see if there's a way we can overcome that conundrum. I don't have all the answers yet.
This is a question for both of you. I guess there's a potential for workforces to move to more part-time positions or capacity. Do you see that there is a shift across to more of a part-time workforce arrangement to, in the immediate context, as brought up by Mark, controlling operational overheads?
Yeah, so I think definitely in some areas of our business. So in the construction side of the business, part-time arrangements is something that we would definitely be looking at. It may not necessarily be a job share, but it might be more, 9-day fortnights, those types of things, so we can keep key talent. In the operational side of the business, it's a bit more challenging because, to give you an idea, an airside ops officer, so that's the individual that actually does the runway inspections to make sure that the runway is safe for people to fly. It takes 18 months to get one of those individuals qualified, and it's about a $90,000 investment. So having more of them working less actually doesn't work in that scenario. So it would be varied for our business.
What about you, Kelly? Is it something that MOQdigital is exploring?
Yes, in short, yes. I think to Jane's point, it has actually, there's a role of legislation, government and cost here that you need to balance off. And my belief is that there is people in the market that want to be able to be engaged in a part-time basis. And there is a contracting market as well, but that has typically focused on full-time. The issue is right now as businesses, we're not necessarily set up to consume people in ways other than full-time. So I think this is a huge opportunity for the whole industry. I personally have a husband who's been a part-time worker for many, many years because he's been the primary caregiver of our children. And so I've been able to be a viewer of this over years as to how the role of part-time workforce has changed, and the view of that as not just being something that is related to I need to pick up the kids from school, but about choice, about saying I'm actually happy to just have a job, work less, and potentially have a smaller income, but at least be engaged in a community and be able to work. Some of the challenges are economic. So it costs the same per head to manage a resource, whether they're full-time or part-time. And so this shift that's going on inside of our whole world and that community aspect of us looking and saying, this is something that we as a business may face. We have not had to yet, but others will. We have a choice of either to reduce our workforce or keep the number of people and reduce the work simply because the work isn't there. And I think if you're not thinking about that as a business, then the reality of what's still got to come and got to run in this, because we haven't really talked about it, but the post-JobKeeper world is about saying how many staff do we have, how much work do we have for them, and how do we actually make those economics stack up. So I'm pretty keen to see, the role of the government isn't everything, but certainly the way that they position and help guide businesses with some elements of how to manage those problems, because ultimately we've got a set of work that needs to be done for our customers and a set of outcomes, and managing a part-time workforce. We do have part-time workforce, but like most businesses, the majority of our people are full-time. But I think there's a huge opportunity to relook at that and think about what are the barriers to doing that.
Dave, if I can just comment on that, I think one thing that I've observed more broadly across businesses in Brisbane is, as you mentioned, Kelly, the use of reduction in hours to retain jobs and to retain employees. That's probably been a significant focus in the majority of businesses that have been impacted financially by this. It's been pleasing to see, because I was recruiting HR during the GFC, and I distinctly remember a number of weeks where it was just call after call and a lot of redundancies and rolling redundancies, whereas I think almost the leaders now went through that previously, and there's almost a bit of a lesson in that in terms of what's best for people, their families, the economy, and using JobKeeper during this period to be able to top up and keep people in roles. I think, as you said, Kelly, the telling piece around where are we actually at will be when JobKeeper is taken away from some sectors, and that'll give a more realistic picture of the market as well. But I think that move to a 50% or a 0.8 in the workforce has definitely been more utilised, and something that I know in a lot of my conversations, a lot of people are saying, I might not go back. I'm really enjoying the benefits of that flexibility as well.
Absolutely. And look, I know Mark in his line of questioning asked about keeping talent. I mean, one of the challenges we've got right now is there's not a lot of movement going on in the market, but partly because people don't want to be at risk, but everyone is looking at what's really important to me. What do I want to do with my time? And when businesses have really strong open conversations with their staff to say, we're going to come to a period where we don't have enough work for people. So, who would be willing to consider this? Reducing hours versus loss of jobs, etc., and having that, it's a really tricky conversation. And for us, we haven't got there yet. Will we in the future? Well, one of the problems is no one knows, but the maturity in the leadership out there, which is the long game, we've invested in our staff to this point, which means everyone who's currently on our staff, we have done some form of learning development involved and investment in them as a person. And we have equity in who they are as a member of our team. And so looking at that as a priority rather than just, how many people can we get rid of? I think I'm seeing that as a really positive sign in the maturity in the leadership, because these are all very hard conversations, because at some point, some businesses will have to survive. And ultimately, if we can't pay our staff, we can't survive. So that is a real conversation that is still going to play out over the coming months.
I think as well, for people, if there's not the movement at the moment, but I think when the market shifts and confidence does return, I think a lot of people will explore options, and what they'll be looking at will be the physical location and Brisbane, and how Brisbane as a city has fared through this period. They'll be looking at, and they will ask questions around how did you as a business manage through COVID, and what was your priorities for your people? I think that from a people and culture perspective, that will be some of the questions and the positioning that businesses will need to take with their proposition to top talent moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed Chris put a question on the Q&A, which it might be a good time to bring it up. But we as businesses, we have to play the long game, because our employees don't forget. And if we don't treat them with respect and genuine care now, then they will remember that. And when the market picks up, they will move on. Now, if that's what you want, then that's fine. But ultimately, when the market picks up, everybody knows it costs money to turn over staff, right? Because you've done investments. So how we treat our employees now is incredibly important. And Chris's question was, their business has worked remotely for a long time, but what are more ways that we can create connection? And I guess I was just going to give some ideas. One of the things that I was very lucky. So we have a community club we call Our Place, and they mobilise themselves to come to me to say, because I'm the chair, how can we help our staff feel, connected during this time? And they launched a program of things which was actually about that human connection, not just about the business. So we had all of our CEO all hands meetings happening weekly. We had a very present and connected CEO. We had our weekly short and sharps by team, etc. But what we did were different programs and lunch and learn, so that people could opt to drop in, almost like an impromptu. We did getting financially fit in ready for post-COVID world, leading and managing remote teams, mental health. We did support for homeschooling. I mean, we're not educators, but we have educators on staff, so we made them available to help. And a lot of times it's just parents needing to talk to someone. We ran kids discos so that the kids could get online and dance and see each other and feel connected to other kids. I mean, these are things that we would never have done before. We opened some conversations in what we call Humans of MOQ, where we picked people who were interesting and had interesting lives and did Q&As with them. And all of these things were simply ways of seeing each other, not just in our role, but as people, And that helped with the connection, because what we forget is that within our teams and our departments, we see a lot of each other, but the cross-departmental pollination, a lot of that happens through physical proximity. Overhearing conversation, walking past someone, running into someone at the coffee shop who's in a different department and overhearing what they're doing. When you're working remotely, those things are hard to pick up. So you have to be quite explicit in creating space for unstructured conversation to emerge. So that was just a bit of feedback on that Q&A.
And if your budget is tight, those things don't cost a thing either, Kelly. So yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, my budget is zero. Like that's the brutal truth. It's all driven by people. And you know, our internal social media, we have Yammer. We would seed conversations. What's your favorite work from home t-shirt? What's your ugly mug? You know, bring your dog, show us a picture of your dog. These things don't cost anything, but they do take curation and moderation to get people engaged. And it's been wonderful, but unfortunately, we just simply didn't have money to throw at it before, let alone after. So we've had to get creative.
Right. Over to you, Doug. I'm just conscious of time. Oh, just on mute.
There we are, that's better. Look, thanks very much, Kate. We really appreciate you leading Jane and Kelly through today's webinar session. Thank you to you, Jane, and to Kelly. I just wanted to quickly bring in one of our members, James Cooper, who is the head of Golf Central here at Airport. You guys were talking quite a bit about connection and making sure the staff feel connected. For those staff who are coming back into the work environment, James and the team at Golf Central have come up with a unique team building experience. James, welcome to you this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Doug. Thank you. It was a very interesting conversation and some insights into a new world ahead of us.
Definitely a new world. James, tell us a little bit about the team building experience that Golf Central's got going at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Probably decades ago, golf was known as the ultimate boardroom or the ultimate office. And certainly through COVID, golf's become a pretty popular sport again, not only at Golf Central, but golf courses around the world. So it's been an opportunity for, we've had people saying, thank God you're open, we can come out and play, and a bit of a relief. And we've seen, you know, around the areas where people have their computer on the desk and on a table and their golf clubs beside them. So what we saw with people starting to use golf as an opportunity where they could get some active recreation, hit some golf balls and talk about whatever they need to from a work point of view or a social point of view has been important. And coaching has been important, where people, I think, as the ladies touched on before, what do I want to do in my life? I've always wanted to play golf or whatever the sport may well be. So it appears that now has been the time for people to make those decisions. So we've implemented a number of team building experiences where people can get teams together. The great thing about Golf Central, we've got a big wide open spaces, so fantastic during this time. But people can come out. We've got some very qualified golf professionals where we can do smaller groups, where it might be a group of 4 that want to hit some golf balls, use top trace and get a bit of coaching, through to the larger groups where we can set up different stations around Golf Central. So somebody can, we have a group that does some chipping and some putting and some hitting some golf balls and, using our coaches. So it's really good for players of any level. Our coaches are great at being able to adapt if it's an elite player standing next to a beginner trying to learn to chip or putt or hit shot. So we've got those packages in place. It's very cost effective. It's sort of, $45 a person is where it starts from, and we can incorporate some food and beverage and enjoy some golf and the great outdoors.
Fantastic. James, how can people find out more about it, mate?
Yeah, if you just head to our website, we've got all the information on there, or obviously call in and we can show you around what we've got, what we've got here. So the golfcentralbne.com.au is where you'll find all the information.
Wonderful.
I can attest, we've run multiple team building days with Golf Central, and they're really great days. You don't have to be a golfer, any age, any fitness. It's good fun, so I recommend it.
I can attest to that, Jane. I absolutely love golf, and I love playing it. The problem is I can't actually play that well, but I still get out as much as I possibly can during the downtimes to work on my game. So, James, you'll see me out there surely in the next few weeks, no doubt about it. Thanks very much, James. I really appreciate that. Thanks very much to everyone who has attended today's webinar session. Keep an eye out for future emails for webinars that we'll be holding over the coming months. We have another Australia Trade Coast webinar coming up, likely in late July, as well as a number of other actual real physical events that we're going to be hosting out here at Airport, which we're really looking forward to. Whether we're bumping elbows or shaking hands, that's still a question up for debate at the moment, but appreciate everyone coming along. If anyone's interested in memberships with BNE Enterprise, please email us at info@bneenterprise.com. We'd love to hear from you, as well as any subject and theme areas that you would like to have addressed at future webinars. Please feel free to get in touch and give us some feedback on that. I'd like to thank Kate once again, Jane and Kelly, and as well as James has been a part of the webinar this afternoon, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.